Phantom fans, my name is Sam Olmstead. His name is Justin Irwin. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. You know what the fun thing about shoveling after a major snowstorm is? You end up pulling muscles you forgot you had. Now, around my town, people were reporting anywhere from 12 to 15 inches of snow. I live in a residential area with big houses all around, so I guess that blocked some of it and ended up with a little shy of 10 inches here. So, Justin, you live in more wide open spaces than I do. How many inches did you get when you whipped out your yardstick?
Well, I mean, I have some tree line around me that was shielding some of it, but I had, I think, enough to safely bury Peter North, 13 inches. So, yeah.
Okay.
Do not Google that, kids. Do not.
Yeah, do not Google that. I will tell you what, if you are someone who almost amputated your toes 5 or 6 times today with a metal snow shovel, and now they look like factory rejected Vienna sausages, make sure to get in touch with the fine folks at Advanced Podiatry. Neither frostbite or involuntary amputation will stop them from providing the best treatments possible. Dr. Ashdown and Dr. Carnivus will literally have you back on your feet in no time. Check out advancedpodiatry.com to find a location near you and request an appointment today. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether you are listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple or Google Podcast, Amazon Music, or on Western Reserve Radio through the TuneIn or Live 365 apps, Western Reserve Radio Facebook and Twitter page, or the Youngstown Phantoms Facebook page every Wednesday at 5:06. We're glad you're here. So we have a lot to get into in this show, so we're just going to jump right in. Last Tuesday after we recorded, and I'm sure this wasn't on purpose at all, because when we recorded on Wednesdays, all the news came out on Thursday. Now that we've switched to Monday, all the news comes out on Tuesday. The news had come out that Phantoms had made a trade with the Fargo Force, sending forward Ryan Alexander and a 2022 Phase 2 6th round pick to the Force in exchange for forward Charlie Lurie and a 2022 Phase 2 4th round pick. Numbers-wise, stats-wise, it was a fairly even trade. The only real difference being that Lurie is a year younger. Now, we will certainly miss Ryan's energy and speed, but after watching the game last Saturday night, Lurie plugged into the lineup fairly well.
Yeah, he seemed to fit in immediately. We noticed that, he was immediately out on the first power play. Yeah, it's kind of, switching maybe a setup guy for a scoring guy. We're kind of looking for secondary scoring, but yeah, it seemed to work out okay. We traded up draft for next year. We had kind of expected some sort of a roster move, a trade coming. Sometimes you have to take what's presented, I guess. So this is what happened.
Yeah, that comes down to, as far as imports, Phantoms were won over after bringing in Tomasz Maciu. We knew one was going to have to go. We made some guesses as to who it might have been. We're not correct. I guess there's something to be said for trade value. If you are going to send somebody off. So this was the move they made. That's, and I have to tell people, you don't always want to get too attached to players in this league, because these are the kind of things that happen. But yeah, certainly wish Ryan the best in Fargo. They are getting a heck of a player.
Yeah, and I think the Phantoms got fair compensation so far. I think everything is kind of working out in our favor. This is a long-term deal, so we get draft picks, we get a player who might potentially play another year, so we'll see, but, we're 1-0 so far.
So while this was going on, the rumor mill started up last week after the University of Minnesota goaltender Jack LaFontaine signed a pro contract with the Carolina Hurricanes and left school. This created a roster spot for Minnesota that could have been filled by one of two players, either Gino Pachor from Cedar Rapids or our own Owen Bartoskevich. Bardo was the one rumored to be heading north, which ended up being the case. So to fill his spot on the roster with the Phantoms, affiliate Jacob Fowler was called up from the South Kent School in Florida. Now, Jacob is somebody we've talked about before on the show, mainly due to the numbers that he has put up in prep. He left Florida with a record of 15-6 with a 1.68 goals against average and a .928 save percentage. Now, this is of note because the typical knock on prep hockey is that scoring is valued over defense and goaltending. So a prep goalie putting up these kind of numbers kind of forces you to take notice.
Yeah, he's got, like you said, good numbers in, areas where scoring is more dominant. He's got size. 17-year-old goalie coming. I think he's also played with Florida Alliance. So, it will be interesting to see. I'm sure we'll want to work him in at some point. I'm looking on the schedule here, maybe against the under 17 USA teams. I'm kind of interested to see what he's got.
And as far as the whole Bartoskevich thing, you actually picked up on that right away when the news broke that one of their goaltenders was leaving for the NHL. You were on that pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, we started talking about it, Sunday night, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of, anytime I see something like that, I'm like, oh, somebody is probably getting an emergency. Hey, here's a scholarship. Pack your bags. We need you right now. I looked up who was on their depth chart, prospects, and I'm like, oh, these guys played last weekend and we won, so I'm guessing they're going to pick Bartoskevich. I think you agreed with me, and
yeah,
it was, obviously those were the only two, I think, prospects that I really found that had committed to the Golden Gophers. The only other one was, I think, one of Team USA's players who isn't old enough, I don't think, to, go. So it was an obvious choice all around. Good luck, Bartoskevich. Congratulations.
And rounding out the week was the news that due to COVID, which the USHL can never just come out and say, the Phantoms game on Friday night in Chicago was postponed. The game, surprisingly, has already been rescheduled for March 24th, so just the one game this weekend for both teams.
Yeah, I think this came out like pretty much 30 minutes after we started talking about Bartoskevich getting called up, when we first got semi-confirmation on that. We all know the USHL press release at this point. I can tell you which team it was. Both teams had, a fairly normal roster. I don't think we had too many scratches that were abnormal. They had Lipkin out, who was suspended. Fantilli, we knew, was injured. Pretty normal game for Saturday night. So this is the new normal.
All right, so we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at the Phantoms' lone game this weekend with the USHL leading Chicago Steel. And we're back. So this past weekend, like we talked about, the game on Friday night with Chicago was postponed, so only the one game on Saturday night. The scoring summary, at least in the beginning, will be pretty easy to get through. No scoring in the first or the second period. It took 41 minutes and 37 seconds before anyone was finally able to break through. So yeah, in the third period at the 1:37 mark, Steven Sardarian, his fourth of the season from Kyle Bettens and Adam Ingram, giving Youngstown a 1-0 lead. Very pretty play. Sardarian getting the turnover on the boards, getting the puck to Ingram, who went tape to tape from Bettens back to Sardarian, who had a wide open net. Just a beautiful goal, just a beautiful setup. At the 10:41 mark, Jaden Grant, his 12th of the season from Trey Taylor and TJ Schweighardt, giving Youngstown a 2-0 lead. This was another fun one. This kind of lends you to the scouting, going over tape review, because it was brought up that one thing Chicago has struggled with is shots from the point getting tipped in. We saw the Phantoms try this a few times. This was one of those times where the puck went in. Jaden Grant right in front of the net. Trey Taylor taking the shot from the point. Phantoms take a 2-0 lead. At the 3:15 mark, Chicago ruins the shutout. Lucas Gustafsson?
The Goose.
Sounds right in some universes. Picks up a power play goal, his 7th of the season from Jack Harvey and Jackson Blake, bringing Chicago back within 2-1. And then with 1.2 seconds left on the clock, Chicago pulls their goaltender. Basically, the Phantoms in the Steel playing a hot potato with the puck near the blue line in the Chicago zone. Trey Taylor finally picks it up, whips it about 130 feet down the ice into the open net, giving the Phantoms a 3-1 lead. That would be the final score. So shots in the game ended up being tied 24-24. Youngstown on the power play 0 for 1. Chicago on the power play 1 for 3. Kyle Chevette in the win, stopped 23 of 24. On the season, his record improves to 10 wins, 5 losses, 1 overtime loss, and 2 shootout losses, with a 2.80 goals against average and a .906 save percentage. Interestingly enough, both of those numbers, as far as goaltenders in the Eastern Conference, he ranks first place in both of those categories. Another few things I wanted to bring up with the Phantoms getting this win. The last 7 games that the Phantoms have scored first, they are 6-0-1 in those 7 games. The Phantoms, of course, now on a 3-game winning streak. That is the first time that has happened since fit back in February of 2019. The Phantoms are also on a 6-game point streak and have points in 8 of their last 10 games. Now, going back to the game the Friday before with Cedar Rapids, after their first period goal, the Phantoms started a nice little scoreless streak there, lasting up until halfway through the third period of the game Saturday night. That scoreless streak ended up going for 162 minutes and 11 seconds. And probably for all of us that suffered through last season, this is probably my favorite one of the week. In the Phantoms' 29th game this season, they picked up point number 31 in the standings. In 49 games that the Phantoms played last season, they finished with 31 points. So at the halfway mark of the season, they've already equaled their point total from last year. And there is still a lot of hockey to be played.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of a exclamation mark there.
So, Justin, it's still early in this series between Chicago and Youngstown, but so far the Phantoms are 2-1 against the defending Clark Cup champions.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 of the games have been, kind of who can score more, run up the numbers. This last one, was more what you would expect middle of the season. It's more about defense now. So I think that kind of favors us at this point.
Well, that's the thing, and discussions I've had with some members of the Phantoms organization, talking about the emphasis on defense for the Phantoms, especially against Chicago. They win because nobody plays defense against them. And when you really think about it, anytime we talk about defensemen from other teams in the East, we're talking about their point totals.
Yeah.
We're not talking about their defensive acumen. We're talking about, the numbers they're putting up on the scoreboard. And you can just looking by a lot of the moves that's been made in the offseason and once the season has started, is that, Youngstown has put an emphasis on defense with the players that have been brought in. And I would say that Saturday night was proof positive that it has paid, it's paying off.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 games we played against them combined were 9 goals. I don't think we can win the season series trying to outscore Chicago. I think that would be suicide at this point. We know that they can score. They have great offensive players. That's not a question. So yeah, this time, obviously, the moves we've made, there has been an emphasis on, defense first. And you can look at the results this weekend as, I think it's going mostly the way that this has been drawn up.
Okay, so we're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll break all of this down in 4 points. And we're back. So for anyone new to the show, 4 points is where we break down the previous weekend into 4 categories: what we liked, what we didn't like, favorite moment, and 3 stars of the week. Justin, since you beat me out on inches last night, I mean snow, you dirty pirate. you have the honors.
Oh, okay. What I liked about this last weekend, defense. We just talked about this. I think this weekend, our defensive first effort is probably one of the best I've seen in, quite a few seasons. Chicago, yeah, they had a few players out. Big deal. We know they have a lot of weapons. We limited them to 1 power play goal on the night. Just all around a great effort. We haven't seen this in a few seasons. So, yeah, I think the defensive first effort is really paying off here.
Yeah, I would, because one thing about Chicago, they get a lot of their goals. They like to get cute in the slot. They like to get cute in front of the crease, and that's where they score a lot of their goals from. Other than one time in the game that this didn't happen, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. For the most part, I mean, they were clogging up that slot. They were getting bodies in front of the net. They were cutting off a lot of kind of these set plays you're used to seeing from Chicago. They were not giving them any space in the slot. And, you had Chicago kind of forced to take more shots from the perimeter, just them forcing the puck to the perimeter and not allowing Chicago to do what they typically do. As far as what I liked, and we talked about this a little bit ago, Charlie Lurie plugging into the lineup right away. You saw him on the top power play line. One of the things you will see in his scouting reports talks about having an accurate shot. He hits the net. We saw that a couple times, even high up on the point. He had no problem hitting the net. He dove in, I guess maybe only a handful of practices or whatever. He was able to jump right in, didn't look out of place. And his name is pronounced Lurie, not Lori, as in Mason Lori, now currently with the Ohio State Buckeyes and former torturer of the Youngstown Phantoms. I don't see how you look at Lurie's name and get Lori, but I heard that many times throughout the night, and it was really screwing with my head.
Yeah. Lurie, like you said, he just kind of plugs in, keeps it kind of simple, and yeah, he just takes a shot, maybe not the hardest, but he makes sure it gets through traffic, gets in on net. And, I'm sure that's going to make something happen here real soon. Yeah, so what I didn't like. The pretty obvious one, maybe the second most obvious of the game. I'll let you still take the low-hanging fruit this week. Wink, wink. But Winter Wallace, 2 penalties in the third period when we're up 2-0. The first one was the steal power play goal. Less than 2 minutes later, he, takes another one. We don't need that at that point. We've seen this before. He's got to stop this and, just stick to playing, aggressive in front of the net to a point, but, maybe not so aggressive behind the net.
Yeah, it's, Chicago with the number one power play that's pretty up there. And if you look at their numbers, they've scored a ton of power play goals, and you put them in that position where they're down 2-0, and you're basically gifting them, 5-on-4s, and they cashed in on the first one. And even without Fantilli or Lipkin in the lineup, this is still a dangerous lineup. There's a lot of weapons on that team, and to just give them back-to-back opportunities like that really could have been a backbreaker. And that goes in, kind of sort of goes into what I didn't like. Not so much the Phantoms giving up that power play goal, the one goal they gave up in the game. It was and we talked about them plugging up the lanes, not letting Chicago do what they like to do in the slot, what they like to do, at the top of the crease. Their power play goal was basically the only time that kind of broke down. The other 2 power plays, Youngstown was able to keep them out. It just took that one moment where they didn't kind of have the middle clogged up there, and that's where they were able to get that, pass through the crease that they were able to put in for their only goal of the game. But in all reality, that part of it, because I fully agree with you on the penalties. Either one of us could have taken that one.
Yeah.
So to pick something else, that was like the only other part of the game that, if they could have at least had somebody there when that puck went, across the crease, this could have been a 2 or 3-0 shutout.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're forced to play, a penalty kill there. Yeah. We had, like you said, we had, covered this the other times. So, just a little bit of a lapse there. So, fortunately, they did not cash in on the second one, and we got out of that one and added the empty netter. I don't know how worried I was at that point, but I can remember being, sitting there being, a little, I don't know, emotional about the penalty being taken. I don't remember how worried I was about them, finally tying it up, or, I'm starting to ramble, aren't I? So, okay. Favorite moment. The Sardarian goal. If you could get a third assist on a goal and get an assist on your own goal, he set himself up for that one. Just a brilliant steal at the blue line. dishes it off, goes to a good area, receives the pass. We're up 1-0. I don't know if any of those were, things that we practice, but that's kind of how you want to draw it up.
Yeah, and that was just one of those tic-tac-toe goals. That was, because he steals the puck at the blue line, banks it off the boards to himself, gets it to Ingram, who gets it over to Bettens, who gets it back to Sardarian. That whole thing maybe took all of 3 seconds. From the time he took the puck, it did not take long to be touched by 3 different players and be in the back of the net.
It looked like a passing drill.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there wasn't something, they had practice or something getting him open from the point, but that was just beautiful.
My favorite moment, that would be David Attenborough. I mean Mark Citron. You watch these Chicago games. If you're listening on like the radio broadcast where there's no video, you got to wonder if some people wonder if they're watching a hockey game or if they're watching like a nature documentary.
Crikey.
Yeah. They're missing Fantilli. They're missing Lipkin. So, Fantilli's not the team captain. He's basically the heart of this team. He's not there. And you can see in a way it affects Chicago. And as getting into the third period, once Youngstown goes up to 2-0, you almost hear Citron's soul leave his body. He became a much quieter version of himself and just kind of having this breakdown for a team that has only lost a handful of games this season. They're losing this one. And he's acting like the whole thing is just falling apart. Like the wobbly legs on the table have broken. The table is collapsing. Everything's going wrong. This was like their 6th or 7th loss of the season, something like that. Or
I think it's only like the second time they've lost, first time or second time they've lost back to back, at least at home.
This was, look it up here.
Yeah.
And then just edit out the fact I'm looking it up. They have lost that. This was their 6th loss in regulation of the season. They've lost 6 in overtime. He was not in a good state by the time this game was over. And quite frankly, you love to see it. Mark Citron is one of the better ones in the league as far as promoting the team he works for. You can never fault him for that, but did the tide turn quickly in that third period from his general demeanor. And as a Phantoms fan, you just love to hear it.
Yeah, the guy, give him credit. He does do a lot of work. He gets the other team's names right most of the time, sort of, more so than his own team, I guess. He just makes up animal noises and, so whatever. And then there's somebody on the team who's the professor, which confuses me because...
no, that was Brock Sheehan. That's the coach.
Oh, okay. That's the coach. Okay. Because to me, the professor is Igor Larionov from the Detroit Red Wings. I'm old. So,
ooh, there's some memories.
Yeah. And if you're a Chicago guy, you don't use Detroit player nicknames. I'm sorry.
Speaking of that, I can't, if anybody listening has ever watched the show Scrubs, there is a whole point of emphasis that the John C. McGinley character, Dr. Cox, is a huge Detroit Red Wings fan. But it's stated early on in the series that his character is actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And as much as I love that show, there is no way that somebody who was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania ends up becoming a Detroit Red Wings fan. So a little goof up in the writing there. I don't see it. Now, the real reason is in real life, he's like best friends with Chris Chelios. That's why he made his character a Red Wings fan. But then say he's from Detroit. Don't say he's from Pittsburgh, because nobody from Pittsburgh is going to believe that. But anyways, now that we've got that aside, we've joked about before doing an extra show, calling it Dump and Chase After Dark. Just maybe every once in a while, just, no language barriers that we put on ourselves on this show. Just talk about hockeys and movies and TV and music and all that kind of stuff. Just the normal, typical conversations we have when we're not recording. We may have to give that some serious consideration at some point.
We could just make up crazy conspiracy theories and... Oh, wait, that's a...
Yeah, we're not that kind of podcast. All right, so last but not least, we introduced this last week, the Dump and Chase podcast 3 stars of the week. So, Justin, I'm going to let you take the first one. This is the third star of the week, Carter Rose.
Yeah. We had, noticed he plays, he's more of an offensive defenseman. He's, really stepped up, taking the puck in around the net, things like that. Sometimes you wonder, are we sacrificing defense, to try to make offense that way? This weekend, I think we both noticed he played very responsible defense, very noticeable out there. I think he definitely gets the point that you can't, give up opportunities to a team like Chicago. So, the team is buying all in, and I think it really showed with the way Rose played.
Okay, and our second star of the night goes to Kyle Chavette. Like I brought up earlier, right now, if you break it up into the category of Eastern Conference and Western Conference, as far as the Eastern Conference is concerned, right now, Kyle Chavette, by goals against average and save percentage, is the number one goaltender in the East right now. Hasn't played in their last 3 games. Those were all Owen Bartoszewicz. So it's been a little while since he's been on the ice. I didn't see any rust from him. And like I said, there are still, even with Fantilli and Lipkin out, there are still players on that Chicago team that can score almost at will. And he, other than just the one power play goal that Chicago scored, which you can't even really fault on him. When you're playing Chicago, this is the type of game you need to play as a goaltender. You need to make the saves you're supposed to make, and you need to steal a few. And that was exactly what he did this entire game. All in all, when it's all said and done, it was the goaltending, it was the defense, that grouping that won this game for Youngstown. But absolutely no rust from Chavette. Showed why he's the number one goaltender in the East right now. And just a phenomenal game by him.
Yeah. And number one star, pretty much copy and paste everything I said about Carter Rose, except maybe just a matter of degrees. TJ Swegheart. He's been very active in the offense, but he's also been very, very solid defensively. He was the best, I think, defenseman this weekend. I think we both agreed. Like you were talking earlier about trade value. We remember earlier in the season, we were talking about giving up scoring forwards for defensive defensemen. I think we got pretty good value from that trade.
Yeah, we've said before, when you have the defensive pairing of Schweighardt and Trey Taylor, I don't think there's another defensive pairing in this league that can match those two. Their stick work on defense is phenomenal. If you had to tip it to either one, because you could have put Trey Taylor on this list as well.
Oh yeah,
but
easily.
But I just think just in this game, and it takes nothing away from Trey, but I think in the biggest moments of this game, it was TJ's stick work on defense that made the difference.
Yeah. We've seen Schweighardt. He pinches in. He goes down below the net. So does Trey Taylor. So does Carter Rose. And, when you can do that and these guys are getting back on defense, it really, really helps. So that's the 3 stars for the week.
With that, it is time for another break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the Phantoms' opponent next weekend, the Muskegon Lumberjacks. And we're back. So this weekend, the Phantoms will be traveling up to Michigan to continue the series with the Muskegon Lumberjacks. This will be the 4th and 5th meetings in this series out of 10 games total. These will be the last games in Muskegon for the Phantoms. The way the schedule worked out this season, in 10 games in this series, the first 5 games were to take place in Muskegon, and the last 5 games were to take place in Youngstown. So this will be the last trip to Muskegon, at least regular season, for the Phantoms. But again, this will be the 4th and 5th meeting in this series. Youngstown against Muskegon this series, 1 win, 1 overtime loss, and 1 shootout loss. So that is 4 out of a potential 6 points. This has just been such a weird, even just 3 games, this has been such a strange series between these two teams so far this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be going down the stretch, going to be a slug out. It's Muskegon. We kind of hope for that, I think.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's been more or less even. I don't even really know how to quantify it, but yeah, we've got
Yeah.
4 out of 6. It's been good. Muskegon started out pretty bad this season. They've gotten a lot better. I'd almost give them the most improved so far in the East. But yeah, so 5 games in Muskegon. If we can come out of there at least at 500, going into the 5 games in Youngstown, I'll be happy. And we're already 4 out of 6, so I think we're way ahead.
Yeah. Muskegon's first 10 games, they only won one. The last game that these two teams played, that was the New Year's Eve game. That was a 3-2 overtime loss for the Phantoms. Yeah, and you just get into some of this. In these 3 games, Muskegon has outscored Youngstown 7-6. But like I said, in those 3 games, Youngstown has taken 4 out of 6 possible points. In those 3 games, Youngstown has only led for a grand total of 1 minute and 57 seconds. And that was in the game they won outright. But yeah, 2 games, one an overtime loss, one a shootout loss. So they've collected points in all 3 games. When you look at it, you would think Youngstown had no business winning, coming away with any points. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's been so strange about this series. And it goes back to one of the great things about the Muskegon rivalry is no matter how good one team is doing or how bad the other team is doing, these are always very close, hard fought games.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I know it's a cliche, but parity in the league. Even when one team is, doing badly, they're not a bad team. So Muskegon has used whatever connections they have to Russia to bring in some goaltending, which seems to have helped. And, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see, when they start coming to Youngstown, how the series evolves. But we've done pretty good so far in Muskegon. Hope for a strong finish, and look forward to seeing them at the Cavelli.
Okay, so last weekend, Muskegon was had a 2-game series with Green Bay. They swept that series, winning both games in overtime. Muskegon is 9-1 in their last 10 games. So coming into this weekend on the season, Muskegon with 20 wins, 10 losses, 1 overtime loss, and 2 shootout losses. That is good for 43 points and second place in the East, and they are rapidly catching up on Chicago. Youngstown coming into the weekend, 13 wins, 11 losses, 2 overtime losses, and 3 shootout losses for 31 points, sitting in 5th place in the East, trailing Madison. But right now, Youngstown has 4 games in hand, so a couple wins here and there, might be able to bump them up past Madison. On the season, Muskegon is averaging 4.06 goals per game. They are giving up 3.64 goals per game. They currently sit with a plus 14 goal differential. The Phantoms on the season averaging 3.14 goals per game, giving up 3.14 goals per game. So that works out 0 goal differential, 91 scored, 91 given up on the season for the Phantoms so far. Special teams, Muskegon on the power play, 21.3%. That is 5th in the East. Their penalty kill, 71.9, is 7th in the East. Youngstown's power play, 21.9. That is 4th. And their penalty kill, 71.7. That is last place in the Eastern Conference. So basically, when you look at it, the special teams for both of them is just a complete wash. The numbers are practically identical.
Yeah, and neither are something that either team should be proud of at this point. But yeah, it's going to come down to, opportunities. Maybe not on special teams. I think, whoever manages to capitalize on turnovers, things like that. So, but, the way things are going, it could be, whichever team is healthier.
And we talked about the last time we previewed Muskegon, we talked about that Muskegon's not going to beat you on the power play. They're not going to beat you on the penalty kill. They they've been beating teams even strength.
Yeah, and obviously, if you can win 5-on-5 consistently, you're going to win games, and that's what they're doing.
Okay, so these games will be happening this Friday and Saturday. The puck drop for both games is 7:10 local time. These games will be available on Hockey TV. And we're going to take one last breather, and after the break, we'll preview next week's show and wrap up this episode. And we're back, and that's all the time we have for this week. Make sure to tune in next week when we recap this weekend in Michigan and look ahead to next weekend's return to the Covelli Center for a 3-3 weekend with Team USA, the under-17s. Again, we want to thank our sponsor, Advanced Podiatry. To find locations and appointment information, be sure to visit advancedpodiatry.com. As always, the Dump and Chase podcast is brought to you by hockeyfan.com, and be sure to visit our syndication partner at ohiohockeydigest.com. And if you aren't doing so now, you can hear us every Wednesday at 5:06 on Western Reserve Radio, on the TuneIn or Live 365 app. You can also stream the show on Western Reserve Radio's Facebook and Twitter pages, as well as the Phantom's Facebook page. You can hear episodes, old, new. All of our episodes are archived on YouTube, as well as wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And of course, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I am now up to 85 followers on Twitter. I am creeping towards 100. I am getting there slowly but surely. Unfortunately, some of the new ones are people who think I cover the Fargo Force because of the rookie point standings I keep putting up on Twitter. I don't know if they think I'm covering what's his name from Fargo that are now following me because of it, but they're going to be sorely disappointed. But yeah, all of these links can be found in the description of however you're listening to this show on our Linktree page. And last but not least, to listeners old and new, thank you for listening in. Thank you for supporting us. So for Justin Irwin, I'm Sam Olmstead. We'll talk with you again next week. Bye now.